the political conditions in Pakistan were making it extremely difficult for Ahmadis to practice the faith of Islam.
मालूम नहीं उसको कि ये तंज़ के निश्तर महमीज़ लगाते हैं इरादों को हमारे।
वो तालीम जो 1300 साल के बाद फिर जिंदा की गई थी, अगर आपने मिटने दिया तो खुदा आपको कभी माफ नहीं करेगा। अपने हुकूक मिटते हैं तो मिटने दीजिए, अपनी जायदादें छीनती हैं तो छीनने दीजिए। आज इस्लाम की जिंदगी आपसे यह मुतालबा करती है कि इस्लाम के नाम पर हर मौत कबूल कर लें, लेकिन मोहम्मद मुस्तफा के दीन को ना मरने दें, ना मरने दें, ना मरने दें। खुदा आपके साथ हो, खुदा आपके साथ हो और हमेशा इस्लाम के लिए हर कुर्बानी पेश करने की तौफीक अता फरमाए।
These words of the Khalifa became the last few ever uttered at a Jalsa Salana in Pakistan. Exemplary sacrifices were to be made by the Khalifa of the time that were also mirrored by his followers.
रोशन किए हम मशअले जान चलते रहे हैं।
Because of the strict conditions, he was not able, and nobody could see that he could operate just as the active guide and leader of the community. He could not give the instructions, he could not deliver the sermon, he could not lead the prayer, and as if there was complete censure on his speeches and activities and all that.
So finally, Hazur decided, and it is a very brilliant part of the history of Ahmadiyyat, how Hazur successfully and safely migrated from Pakistan on the 30th of April 1984.
By that time, the UK Jamaat had already planned its Jalsa, because it was a normal routine that in the month of July we hold the Jalsa. So the program was made, it was all approved and everything was settled. Huzur came. So after 1 month, then I proposed to Huzur that Huzur, this is the program. So what is the instruction about that? So Huzur said that the program that has been made, that is okay. Just change one thing, that the last concluding address I will be delivering.
The first 2 sessions were held in Mahmood Hall, and then the final session took place in Tolworth Recreation Centre.
It was all packed, hall was packed. After saying the concluding prayer, then Huzur went to the ladies' side and then he came back to the London Mosque. So that was the Jalsa which took place for the first time in 84 when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala was present there.
Guests of the Promised Messiah, on whom be peace, initially were accommodated in the households of the UK members, but soon after, guests flocked from across the world to London around the Divine Khalifa. From humble beginnings, the world saw tremendous progress. This was the will of Allah and His divine plan.
When Khalifatul Masih Salis Rahimahullah came and he visited this particular area, at that stage we had no idea that this will be where we would have Islamabad. There's beautiful views if you go on parts of the road, and I'm told that Hazrat Akhtas actually stood on those parts and was inspired by the countryside there.
This inspiration of the Khalifa was to be fulfilled at the hands of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV, on whom be peace.
When Hazur arrived, he obviously realized that the Jamaat would require somewhere, and he instructed the Jamaat to find something suitable. And obviously various feelers were put out.
So I remember regarding the purchase of this Islamabad, it was also very interesting. It was sold in an auction, we came to know, and there were some people who were looking after this purchasing plan, and Huzur gave them the idea that 425,000 should be the maximum price of this land according to every judgment. He actually went there first few days before the auction. He physically, personally went there And I remember the place where he led the Asr prayer. So next day, after the Fajr, he told us that yes, go ahead with the bidding. And the 3 members team, they went there, and the auction went up to exactly 425, and that was given by us. And they were thinking that if it comes with that price, then we are going to go get it. But it so happened that somebody gave the bidding at 426,000. So our members, they thought that, well, it's going beyond us. We can't go. But then they decided within themselves that, well, even if it's a matter of couple of 2,000 pounds or so, then we will pay, and anyway, because it's a good proposal, we want to have it. So they offered 427,000, and luckily they got it. So it was just as accurate, as it could be possible in such a big purchase. He was very happy that Alhamdulillah this property has been purchased. And the same day at 5 o'clock news, it was on the television that a Muslim organization has purchased the Sheephatch School, a property in £500,000.
The land of Islamabad was another gift from Allah the Exalted, and this large piece of land in the beautiful countryside of Surrey was purchased only to serve as spiritual training grounds for the humble men of Allah. With this purchase, new challenges were faced, especially those of administrative nature. Facilities, infrastructure, skills and manpower were lacking to manage such a vast land.
Huzur very graciously thought that the help from the center should be sought. So one big help was that Chaudhry Hamidullah Sahib, who was the officer Jalsa Salana in Rabwa and Wakil Ala as well, he was personally asked to come over here along with some other people. Then he chose some other people to also come and join. So these people were then allocated in various departments, like particularly the Langar, that's a very important area, and some other departments. So under his supervision and guidance, the local teams were prepared.
It was in April 1985 that the first ever Jalsa Salana took place in Islamabad.
In Islamabad, there's an open area which was quite good to accommodate the 2 big marquees. We acquired very big marquees, but still I could say that much smaller marquees as we use now. But it was a different shape because of the financial constraints. We only rented those marquees with the pole in between, in the middle, and there were a complete line of poles throughout the marquee. But there was no proper flooring at that time. Just the mat or the carpet was there. But if it rained, then it was very bad condition inside, mud and all that.
And because it rained very heavily, the water managed to get in from the sides into the Jalsa Gah. And everyone sitting on the carpets, had their clothes wet. And then also because we were parking cars on the grounds within Islamabad, because of the heavy rain, it became very wet and muddy. And it became impossible for the cars to move there. And our young Khuddam at that stage actually used to pick up the cars literally and take them out, and they were completely covered in mud.
And I remember that Huzur himself also came out of his residence when he came to know that this situation is there, and just wanted to encourage everybody and saying farewell when the people were going on the last day.
Due to the unique relationship of the Khalifa with his followers, we find that a lack of resources became secondary, and an unskilled community in the coming years, due to the benevolence of Allah, were able to stand upon their own feet. The voice of the divinely appointed Khalifa that opponents wanted to confine, Allah, through new means and modes, made echo across the world.
When Hazrat Aqdas came here, he actually used to do Majlis Irfan 7 days a week initially. And these were being recorded, and also his Friday sermons were being recorded. And then what used to happen is that these were recorded on cassette tapes.
The start of this concept, it started with this advent of the audio and video cassettes when the Jamaat started doing that. And it was a laborious task to first to record, but then to make duplicates of those audios and videos, and then to send them to different corners of the world was a laborious task and time consuming as well.
And the recording of the Friday sermon would then be, we had a team here working together who would duplicate them. And there was a duplicator that we had a number of duplicators. And by the evening, all the duplications were done, and then those tapes were sent around the world to various countries, and that is how communication started.
During the early years, to relay the message of the Khalifa through new mediums was difficult. However, according to divine design, the voice of the Khalifa reached the corners of the world, and a natural progressive revolution took place.
When we started in 1984, we only had about 2,500 to 3,000 people that attended our first Jalsa. And then when we had the first Jalsa Salana in Islamabad, the number grew to about 5,000. Then we see that the next few years it grows up very slowly to 6,000, 7,000. And then in the 90s, more people had started to come here. People from Europe used to come here. Then proper delegations used to come from different countries.
I think the word expansion is an integral part of Jalsa Salana. Always it takes place. And this word is actually taken from that revelation of the promised Messiah ﷺ, which said, Vasse Makanaka. So we have to expand our accommodation, our facilities, our arrangements all the time. And this we have seen, particularly when we are talking about UK Jalsa Salana, we have seen that this has been taking place every year. The expansion was there in number, in the arrangements, in the facilities, and more things were developed, and arrangements were always improving in so many ways.
Every department underwent progress and expansion. The message of the Khalifa was being translated into many languages and relayed live across the world. Alongside this, the infrastructure was vastly improved. Parking facility was expanded, better services were provided for the guests of the promised Messiah on whom be peace, and more land was added to Islamabad.
We had come to a point where the largest markets possible that could be erected in Islamabad were being erected, and we had absolutely no room for expansion. We had at that stage attendances about 11,000, maybe 12,000, and that was the maximum, and it was becoming very, very tight. So we started looking, we were actively looking for an alternative site.